So we're now on Daf Lamed Vav Amid Beis. I would say approximately 15 lines down from the top. And on Lamed Vav Amid Beis, you'll see a whole bunch of tosfos in. If you count down 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth tosfos, which is called Chizuk, you go up about 2 lines above tosfos Chizuk, and you'll see it says Ein Havlad Shel Kayom. Okay, then? So at least we have the place. And this is a quote, of course, from the Mishnah. Ein Havlad Shel Kayom. So the case is where a man goes ahead with Yibum to be miyabim his Yevamot, and as it turns out, she is muberes, she's pregnant. She gives birth to a nefa. That's called Ein Havlad Shel Kayom. So again, he was miyabim prematurely. He jumped the gun. We should have waited until the results of this pregnancy. But at the end of the day, even though he deserves patch for jumping the gun and being miyabim before the clarification, but nevertheless, he was miyabim her. And as it turns out, she was not carrying a viable child. It was a Vlad she'ena shel kayama, what we call a nefel, and therefore his yibum is valid. Tana, we learned in a brayso mishum Rabbi Eliezer Amru, even though l'chora, once she has a nefel, is he gloy milsil mafreya, now we have retroactively determined that he made a kinyan and his yibum was valid because she fell for yibum, because zera ein lo. Nevertheless, says Rabbi Eliezer, he should not continue in that marriage relationship. Why? Because since when he implemented his yibum, he entered into what's called a Safek Iser Kare situation. On the side that she would carry to term a viable being, give birth to a viable being, he had relations with Ashes Achid. It's a Safek. At the time that he had the bia, we don't know. We can't determine. Therefore, Yotzi begets, meaning, even though the Vlad is Eina Shel Kayom, but it could have been otherwise. The results could have been the other way around. It's like you bet on a certain team, you got lucky and that team won the game, but it could have been otherwise. So here also, it could have been otherwise. She might have given birth to a viable being. And therefore the Chachamim say, you know what? Yotzi began. You have to divorce your wife. You had no right to implement Yibum before the result was clear that she gave birth to an Einik Shel Kayom. Now, I'm not sure. I have 2 questions to ask. Question number 1, if we paskin like Reish Lakish, if you remember, the Reish Lakish says that bias meuberes lav shmei bia, then the statement of Rabbi Eliezer is obvious. Again, Rabbi Eliezer is way before Reish Lakish. He's a Tana. Now, it could very well be that we will accept Rabbi Eliezer because we accept Reish Lakish, and they're both on one line of thinking. And that is that bias muberes lav shmei bia. So he wasn't kona. However, I just want to make a very important comment here. Reish Lakish might be talking about a doraisa halach. The Gemara derives Reish Lakish from a pasuk. Uben ein la ayin ba. Here we're talking in Rabbi Eliezer about Gzeira d'Rabbana. And now we get to our second point. Why did the Rabbana make this Gzeira? If the Torah recognizes that bia as a valid kinyan, why undermine that kinyan? Why force him to divorce his wife? And here we could go 2 ways. One way is to say we're afraid that if we don't let out a clear message here, then other people will follow suit. They'll also take this chance. People like to gamble and hope that she, give the abimur and hope that she'll give birth to a stillborn, Rahman. So in order to make sure that no one has that kind of motivation to jump the gun prematurely and implement Yibum, we're going to tell you, you know what? If you do such a thing, you're going to have to divorce your wife. You will gain absolutely nothing, no benefits. The other way of saying it is that this is a penalty, simply a knas. What a chutzpah yak you are. You put yourself into a situation of a suffix iser kares. We're not going to allow you to be a chotei niskar. If you did that chet, benefit from that chet. Omar Rava, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Eliezer, Omru Dover Echad. I have a brisa of Rabbi Meir, and I'm going to prove to you that Rabbi Meir agrees to Rabbi Eliezer. And they both hold that if a man goes ahead and he's miyabem a pregnant Yevama, then Yotzienu. He's going to have to divorce. And by the way, Rabbi, say, let's just emphasize one important point here. Once he divorces her, he cannot remarry her. Why? Because after the get, she goes back to becoming Eishes Achiv. Right? The get terminates the Zika. And as a result, if he wants to remarry her, he can't do so because he's marrying Eishes Achiv. And there's no mitzvah yibum once he divorced her. So Rabbi Eliezer Amara, okay, that we have in the brisa that if he goes ahead and he's miyabim and she's a muberes, he's going to have to divorce her. But Rabbi Meir, where did you find, brother, that Rabbi Meir complies with the shita of Rabbi Eliezer? Because Sanya, we learned to the brisa, lo yiseh adam muberes chavero uminekes chaver v'mnasa yotzi v'lo yachzer olamis. Wow, on both sides. We have just jumped into an entirely different sugya without even blinking. We're no longer talking about Yibum. Our Mishnah, and presumably the brisa of Rabbi Eliezer, was talking about a Yevama situation where he had he implemented Yibum. But now we're quoting a brisa that has nothing to do with Yibum. A man wants to marry an almana. A husband died, and he wants to marry the almana. Problem is, she's pregnant. Why is that a problem? Pregnant woman can't get married? It is a problem. Because if he marries a pregnant woman, there's going to be a lot of confusion about who the father of that child is. You might say, wait a minute, she's already pregnant. If she's already pregnant before he marries her, there shouldn't be any bit of confusion about who the father of that child is. The father is either Gishtarben, he died, or alternatively, he gave her a get, but she's pregnant already at the time of the marriage, the first marriage. And I'll prove to you that we're not talking about an issue regarding tracing the lineage of the child, determining fatherhood. No. I'll prove it to you. Because it says, Meinekes Chaveru. Meinekes Chaveru means that this baby was born. Maybe the baby is almost 2 years old or more. And it's nursing from its mother. Don't marry a nursing woman. Here, there's no question about the identity of the Vlad, who is the father. So what is the problem? What is the issue of marrying a woman who is nursing, a meinekes. So I'm just going to read to you a note. This note is based on a Gemara we're going to get to in Mirza Hashem later in the chapter. On Daf, maybe it's the next chapter, Mem Beis. Hatam shemu beres asur li nosei before lekamon sharei hi asido lahanik espino achar shetele. It's all about Yanika, about nursing. B'shema tisaber shuv shimeinika v'yisaker chelba v'yomas havlad mira'ov v'yachena af meinika lo tinose. I mean, we have to put ourselves into a whole different sociological framework here. You know, today, Baruch Hashem, there are many ways of feeding a young infant. And as great as Yanika is, and the doctors will tell you how beneficial it is for a million reasons, but it's not, you know, life-threatening if the child is not nursed. But back in the time of the Gemara, this whole issue of nursing was very, very critical. And if a man will have a marriage relationship with a meinekes, she may get pregnant. Again, it's highly unlikely that she will not get pregnant, but she may get pregnant. And as a result of her pregnancy, she's going to have to stop nursing. Pregnancy is antithetical to nursing, and the baby might die. And so too in the case of Muberes, if you marry a Muberes, she's going to give birth, and she has to nurse. Now I'm just trying to figure out, is the Gemara, this is a question in biology 1.1, is it the Gemara considering a possibility Oh, I see what's going on. Well, we're not considering the possibility that she'll get pregnant when she's already pregnant, but she'll give birth and she might continue living with her second husband, and then she'll become pregnant, and that will make it impossible, almost impossible for her to nurse. So lo yisa adam muberes chavero umenekes chavero. How long of a period of time do we have to wait? 24 months. Again, and you're talking about a meinekes, so it doesn't have to be a full 24 months. It means 24 months since the birth of the baby. If you're talking about a muberes, it might be a longer period of time because we're going to have to wait until she gives birth, and then 24 months to give the baby 24 months of hanukah, of nursing. Now, I want to ask you a dumb question. A man is married and the couple has a child and she's nursing the baby. Is somebody going to tell me that he's not allowed to live with his wife because she might become pregnant and she'll have to stop nursing? Do you hear my question? It sounds like a dumb question, but it's not so dumb. I mean, the Brisa says, Lo yisa adam uberes chavero. Because after the birth, she may become pregnant, and that'll undermine her Yanika. What about Meinekas Atzmo? His wife is nursing. There's a whole shiloh of birth control. Whether or not there's a heter to use birth control in the case of a woman who is pregnant. But obviously, a woman, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. What I meant to say was, in the case of a nursing woman, there's a whole child about birth control. Why? Because maybe she'll get pregnant, even though she's nursing. And that will undermine her ability to nurse. But you see that he's allowed to have relations with his wife. We're not going to separate a husband and wife for two years, because she's nursing. So the Mefarshim give an answer. And they say the following, that a man has more compassion for his own child than for someone else's child. I mean, that's not a good thing, but that's the reality of the nature of man. So that if a woman will have to stop nursing, can she rely on her husband to find alternative methods of keeping the baby healthy? And herein lies the difference between Muberes Chavero and Muberes Atzmo, or Menekes Atzmo or Menekes Chavero. Because if she is nursing her first husband's baby, then her second husband is emotionally, he comes up with answers. Oh, I can't afford to pay this. I can't do this. So the baby could be endangered if she has to stop nursing because she became pregnant. But if it's his own wife who's nursing, then the assumption is that if she'll have to stop nursing, then he will find other methods of supporting the baby. He'll have to pay for materna, and the baby will survive. The Chachamim Omer Yotze. Chachamim say that if a man went ahead and he married the Muberes or Meinekes of his friend, then we're going to have to force him to divorce his wife. For violating this Isur, we're not going to allow the marriage to continue. So after he divorces her, if she's still available at the end of the 24-month period, he can remarry her. But in the meantime, we're going to force a divorce. So now we have to ask ourselves the question, what does this Rabbi Meir have to do with our Rabbi Eliezer in the case of a Yavam who had Yibum with a pregnant woman, meaning with a Yavama who was Muberes, and later on she gave birth to a Nefel Nebuch. She had a Vlad She'ena Shel Kayama, and Rabbi Eliezer forces again in this case. Now, obviously, there's a striking similarity between the two, and that is that whereas the Chachamim of Rabbi Meir, they say divorce her on a temporary basis until the 24 months pass. Rabbi Meir goes on record as saying, Yotzi v'lo yachzer olamis. He will never be able to remarry her. That has a striking similarity to our Rabbi Eliezer, quoted from the Brisa, who says that if a man is miyabim his wife, his Yavama, when she's pregnant, we're going to force him to give a divorce and he can never remarry her. Now, why does Rabbi Meir say that lo yachzer olamis? Why lo yachzer olamis? I mean, the problem of nursing is no longer a problem. 24 months passed. Why can't he marry him? Well, I should say remarry him. Why not? So the only thing that comes to my mind, Rabbi, unless you have a better alternative, is a knas, that he violated a rabbinic prohibition. He was not allowed to marry this woman. She's meinekes chavero. And we're going to bust up that marriage forever and forever. It's almost as if she's like an erva to him. And that status of an erva continues liolamis. Why? Because he's a rotten bum for going ahead and marrying her. Rabbi Eliezer, on the other hand, is talking about a real erva situation. Again, maybe midrabana, but nevertheless, it's clearly an erva. A man marries a muberes or a meinekes, that's not an erva. But in the case of yibum, if there's no mitzvah of yibum, then she becomes an erva. I'm much more inclined towards Rabbi Eliezer than I am towards Rabbi Meir. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye says to Rava, Nimai, how do you know that the Yotzi Olamis of Rabbi Meir and the Yotzi Olamis of Rabbi Eliezer is one and the same halacha, fundamentally the same? Dilma Lohi. Now let's see if he goes in both directions. Ad kan lo kama Rabbi Eliezer hacha. Why is it that in this case, where he was miyabem prematurely when she was pregnant, the Yevamot was pregnant, that's a real serious violation. Is therefore mishum de kapaga beiser eishes achto raisa. Look at the violation that he violated. The man married a woman who might be an erva veishesach if she carries till term. He should be taught and feathered for that. And therefore, if he was mezalzel in an iser dorais of eishes ach, then he deserves the worst. We should penalize him in such a way that not only does he have to divorce her, but that he won't be able to remarry. Aval Hassam, okay, a man married a muberes or a meinikes chaver. All right, it's not, he doesn't deserve to get shlishi or shishi for it, but he didn't violate a terrible isa. There's no safek erva here. All he did, the worst case scenario is he violated the Rabbanan. So Rabbanan worried about her hanaka situation. Therefore, it's very possible that Rabbi Eliezer in this case would say Yotziena and then Viachzirena. L'sheyagia zmano is Yichnos. We're not going to be so harsh and to establish that once he divorces her, he can never remarry her. That far, Rabbi Eliezer is not going to go because what did he violate? The worst violation he could be guilty of, held accountable for, is a violation of an Issa D'Rabbanan. Mashenke, in the case of Rabbi Eliezer, there we're talking about a violation, the suffix of an Issa Erba. Inami, says Abaye, now I want to take it the other way around. That Dafka, in the case of Rabbi Meir, even though he only violated Issa D'Rabbanan, I'd kind of look on Rabbi Meir Elamishum. The Rabbanan. Now, why is the violation of a D'Rabbanan more severe than the violation of a suffix erva doraisa? That's counterintuitive. But the answer is that when a person flagrantly and deliberately violates the Rabbanan, we have to be very, very careful about that and punish him from A to Z. Why? Because asu chizuk l'divrayim. Otherwise, people are going to be so laid back and nonchalant about the Rabbanans. I've heard it myself. I don't know if you ever heard it. Oh, come on. It's only the Rabbanan. Did you ever hear that? All right. You never heard it. I'm sorry. But trust me, people are saying, it's only an Issa D'Rabbanan. You're talking about muktzah? Who cares? It's only the Rabban. So the Chachamim asu chizuk l'divrayim. They're going to treat a violation of a Rabbanon as a more severe violation than even a suffix erva suffix isukaris dorais. Aval hacha midoraisa mifurash parshe mina. We don't have to be choshesh that people are going to follow suit and they'll do even with a pregnant woman. They know it's a suffix dorais of a kares. Is parshe mina. Parshe mina means they separate themselves from such an action. They'll be very careful about yibum so as not to violate, an Isur Karetz. When it comes to the Rabbanans, there's a laid-back, nonchalant attitude. So this is the analysis of Abaye. Beautiful analysis. Now let's talk about the dissenting view against Rabbi Meir of the Chachamim. You know what? He violated this Isur. He went ahead and he married a Muberes Chavero, a Menekes Chavero, Yotziena. We have to wait that 24-month period of time until the baby has all the nursing, all the anaka that it needs. But after that, he can remarry her if he's lucky. And if he's not a Kohen. Omar Rava l'divrei Chachamim Yotzia beget. Right, let's go back to the Chachamim. Chachamim Yotzi. What does Yotzi mean? Does Yotzi mean he sent her out of the house and everything, the marriage is in abeyance? The husband and wife have to separate until the 24-month period of time? No, says Rava. Yotziena means he has to give her a get. Rav Zutra wants to support Rava. I don't know who argues against Rava. Is Taikanami the Katani Yotzi, Lo Katani Yafish. Right? If the word that, if you want to indicate that the husband and wife have to separate and they live in two houses, it should have said Yafish, to separate. But it says Yotziena. Yotziena means to give her a get. So obviously the word Yotziena indicates it's not enough. It's not sufficient that they just separate for those 24 months. He's got to deliver again. Now I'm trying to think in my mind, why did the Chachamim object to this possibility of Yafish, of Prisha? If you hold Prisha, which again, we don't know anyone who maintains that Shita, but the Gemara certainly recognizes that as a valid possibility, then I would say that the nature of this prohibition is not the marriage per se, but rather the act of intimacy, because that's what's going to be problematic, could be problematic for the hanaka of the baby. But if there won't be any act of intimacy, then there's nothing wrong with the marriage per se. But let them be mafish. Comes along Rava, and Marzucha supports Rava. The Chachamim say Yotziena, beget. It's not enough Prisha. Prisha would guarantee the results that you need, the achievement, the goal, that you will not endanger the life of the infant. But the answer is there was a psul in the Kiddushin itself. The marriage itself was be'isa. The Rabbanan didn't just say, you know what, let's guarantee that we don't upset and endanger the Hanukah. That's not what they said. They said, you're not allowed to marry this woman, and she's not allowed to get married to a man until the 24 months pass. So it's an Isur in the marriage. It's not what we call Kiddas Moshe v'Yisrael. And as a result, we have to break up that marriage with a get. we cannot let him gain and benefit from a marriage which is illegitimate. The marriage itself is illegitimate. Therefore, Yotzienu beget. It's not just an issue that the Rabbanan said, let's protect the viability and the survival of the child and guarantee a knock of 24 months. No. The Rabbanan said you're not allowed to marry. In modern Israel, you would say that anyone who were officiated at this marriage as the rabbi, he's Masechet Kiddushin, he will forfeit his license, and the rabbinate will no longer allow him to be Masechet Kiddushin. We're not going to give him another chance. So therefore, the Chachamim say, Yotzienu. Comes along Rabbi Meir, and he goes a step further. He says, Yotzienu v'lo yachzirenu olamis. Im nasa yotzi v'lo yachzir olamis. That's already a different halacha. That's already a knas. So let's go with Abaye. Abaye says, Chacham asu chizuk l'divrayim. He violates, he scoffs, and takes the Isur D'Rabbanan lightly. We have to come down very hard on him. Otherwise, people are going to be mezalzel in an Isur D'Rabbanan. That's already a knas. He's therefore lo yachzirenu olamis. And that, says Abaye, does not necessarily have to do with Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar, because Rabbi Elazar is talking about a person who violates the Safek Isur Kares D'Oraisa. And hence we have to be much more machmir, according to one side in Rav. Okay, Rabbos, I think we'll stop here. On the top of, well, here it's on, but really in the Gemara itself, it's Amalei Rav Ashi, which is how many lines? Let's see. I would say it's about 8 lines up from the bottom. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'll take this opportunity to wish you a wonderful Shabbos. We're up to Pasha Shmos already. It's hard to believe. And Emir Shem Lehitraot on Yom Rishon. I don't have a bris on Yom Rishon, so I could be back at the LC. I mean, again, it all depends on weather conditions. So, but hopefully you'll be okay. Yeah. Okay, then. Thank you so much.